And I'm gonna present my research on the impact of aid in the acculturation of Latin American immigrants to the U.S. And first of all, we're gonna see which is the context of this study. Why would we, or I, in this case, want to learn about this phenomenon? Why study immigration and acculturation? What's important about that? And the fact is that the United States, it's on the brink of coming to a second surge of immigration as being the main force in terms of increase of the population. So today, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, we have 50 million immigrants, I'm one of them, and 1 out of 7 Americans today is foreign-born. So the projected immigration for the future till 2060 is 725,000 immigrants every year. That will put an enormous pressure on the culture as we know it today. And people are rightly scared. And sometimes they say, oh, what's going to happen? What's going to be like the America of the future? So the thing is that each group that comes to the state comes with their own cultural baggage. They have their own traditions, they have their own things, their own habits, their food, their religion, their language. And they all eventually blend in and Americanize. But how do they Americanize? What is the way in which they Americanize? What are the variables, what are the factors that make these people more or less successful when it comes to become an American? So the first thing is to analyze immigrant diversity. To the United States came people from all over the world. But if we analyze what are the sources, which are the countries that give the most immigrants to the States, we're going to see that Mexico is by far the largest contributor. 29% of the immigrants, legal or illegal, are from Mexico. Then we have a second big chunk that does not even reach 1/2 of the Mexican influx, and that is China, India, and the Philippines. And then we have El Salvador, Cuba, Dominican Republic, and Guatemala. So lots of immigrants are Spanish speakers, or as they are defined by the American Census Bureau, Hispanics. So they combine, Spanish-speaking immigrants combine for 39% of the total immigrant population. And the thing is that actually Hispanics are not a homogeneous population. They're very diverse. So my research question here was, is there a difference when it comes to acculturation between an immigrant who comes to the United States as a younger person and an immigrant who comes here when he is older or she is older and has already a lot of things shaped into him already, as one of the researchers in the field say, layers of cultural meaning imposed on him. So I was focusing on the age because I thought, according to Goody-Constantine and according to Kramer, who are the big leads in acculturation studies, that actually age, with this superimposing of layers of meaning, cultural meaning, would make a big difference when it comes to acculturating. Because the less you have, it's either the less you have to get rid of, or the less you have to accommodate and compromise and blend into the culture of the host society. And my secondary questions were, okay, what is the role of language? What is the role of the educational level of the immigrant? What is the role played by social interaction? Are people more prone to acculturate if they interact with the mainstream society? or are they going to be affected by certain events that happen in the interaction? What is the role of the community of origin? We saw that most of the Spanish-speaking immigrants are from Mexico. So are Mexicans more likely to acculturate, or are they less likely to acculturate? Because you're going to have a lot of people to refer to that are sharing their own old home values. So those were the questions that I started revising. And my biggest, considering all that, my biggest focus was, okay, if all this plays a part, then age, and the younger you are, it's going to be the better. So I planned my research on answering that question. Now, why my focus on the Hispanic population, apart from the fact that I am technically Hispanic, as per the definition, because Hispanics are the fastest growing minority in the States. They are also very closely knit as a society. They tend to keep their own traditions, and even into the second and third generation, you do not see many, maybe third generation Hispanic girls who do not have a quinceañera party, because it's, oh, you have to have that, and it's not part of the American. They also have the Sweet 16, because if it's a thing of parties, you're going to have Hispanics celebrating. So we have 20 plus countries of origin. We are all different. We are racially and culturally diverse. You have a Spanish speaker from El Salvador and a Spanish speaker from Chile, and they are probably going to ask, what did you mean by that? A lot, because we have different dialects, I would say, even if we all speak Spanish. And then, this is very important, we tend to show a tendency to maintain the home culture and traditions. It's something we cannot get rid of, apparently. So, these are the key terms. And I thought it was important to put them here because there's so much politically charged content when we say Hispanic, and people have an idea of something like Speedy Gonzalez, probably. So it's not necessarily that Hispanic, as defined by the U.S. Census Bureau, which is the one that checks all the statistics, is a person of Mexican, Cuban, Puerto Rican, South or Central American or other Spanish culture of origin. That includes a country in Africa. So you can have a completely African-born person who is technically Hispanic, regardless of race. And that creates a very, gray territory where people are not comfortable. Neither the non-Hispanics nor the Hispanics. So that was one of the things I took very seriously in my research, and I decided not to use the word Hispanic, but Latin American born, because I thought, and this is a very important point for me, that the culture of a Hispanic person born in Africa was not going to be comparable to the already heterogeneous culture of the Hispanics born in Latin America. So at least we were shaping the territory under study. And then within this huge population, there are still differences. So what was the aim of my research? My aim was to describe as fully as possible the phenomenon of immigration from Latin America to the US. And the transition. We all worry about what we suffer, I think. So how the cultural transition process is affected by age and by other variables. And then my focus was the actual experience. When I did all the literature review, I saw so many papers and works and authors focusing on the really hard data, and you had charts and tests, and numbers, and I wanted to see the real data, the experience. And I think that, and that's my perspective here, the best option to get the real story, the real experiences, was to have a phenomenological approach. And it was, in personal terms, it was a really, really rewarding experience, and a very interesting one. So my research activity was, first of all, define the population and the sample. So I already mentioned it. My first definition was, okay, Hispanics from Spain, Europe, out. Hispanics from Africa, out. So we'll keep Latin America. That's big enough. Then I had to identify the possible subjects, and my limit was not only Latin American born, but people who have lived in the States for 5 years at least. Why was the limit of 5 years and not just someone who's new to the country? Because in the literature, the authors make a really strong difference between people who are considered migrants, who are as a transition, like in between, they have not decided to settle, and those who are immigrants. Immigrants are those who do reside on a permanent basis in the United States or in other countries, but in this case, in the United States. Once I identified possible subjects, which wasn't that difficult, I had to screen them to make sure that they actually were suitable for this research. And then I had to group the subjects according to age at the time of immigration. So according to, again, the American Census Bureau, an immigrant who comes to the United States when he has not or she has not turned 16 is not, even if it's illegal, it's not considered responsible. So you're a child. If you are 16 or older, you are an adult. You are making your own decisions. So I grouped them according to, have you, if your immigration started before or after you turned 16. So I had those two groups. And then I had my interviews. And it was so interesting because people actually share their experiences. And it's one of the things that happened to me is that after conducting the interview, and I transcribed and organized my field notes, I transcribed the interview and had everything recorded. And one of the things you are expected to do to make this formal research was validate with the person I interviewed that what I had transcribed was accurate and correct. So I contacted this person, and he read it, and he felt so bad about it. He said, this is perfectly accurate, but I don't want to see me in this light. So would you please remove my narrative? And of course, since we have an informed consent, and one of the key things in the research is that, okay, I'm going to respect your privacy and your wishes, and I said, fine, but I wasn't very, I had to rebalance more things. And this person, I said, okay, I'm going to destroy all the notes I have and the recording, and because the recording was going to be destroyed anyway. And he said, okay, you can destroy everything, but can I keep